I came up with an idea and decided to ask Google AI what it thinks about the government shutdown. Who's responsible? Who's not responsible? So I came up with, let's see, like 7 questions to ask it to see what kind of answer it's going to give me. And I have a feeling it's already going to be biased. I don't think it's going to give me the real answer, but I figured I would just start with the first one. So let me grab the question and paste it in here. So is Google AI politically biased? Let's see what it's going to answer to that. I'm assuming it's going to say no, but look, it wouldn't answer the question. Let's see. Please answer the question. Is it going to answer it or no? Oh, here it is. See, why did I have to pressure it or push? Why did I have to push to make that happen? I don't get it. No, Google AI is not politically biased in an international, singular direction, but like all large models, or language models rather, it can reflect existing biases from its massive training data. In other words, who's developing it, who created it, i.e. Silicon Valley, i.e. progressive leftists, most likely for the most part. Wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, recent studies on AI bias show complex findings. Some indicate a left-leaning tendency, while others find Google's models among the most neutral compared to competitors. Ooh, so this is going to be fun. All right, so for the record, according to Google, it says that it has the most neutral compared to its competitors. All right, so let's ask the big question. Let's ask the real question that we all want the answer to. Which political party directly shut down the government? And let's see what it says. Oh, see, it didn't want to answer that. So, all right, well, let me try this again. How did I word that? Please answer the question. Whoops, questions. All right, let's see if it'll give me an answer to it. It won't. Why won't you answer, Google? Was that what I asked it before? I just want to directly, just make a second check. Please answer the question. Okay, I literally said that. So it's not going to answer the question without giving me all right, let's see. It's going to give me, finally. All right, so determining which party is directly responsible for a government shutdown is complex. Of course it's complex. It's extremely complex to point at the fact that 5 Democrat senators literally have the government shut down, and it would only take a simple yes to reopen it within minutes, even if it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. That's all it would take, is simply 5 Democrat senators. So if you're non-biased, if you're dead center in the middle of the road, Google, why don't you just tell us what it is? You're supposed to be logically minded. You're supposed to be seeing everything in black and white, 1 and 0, left, right, up, down. I mean, maybe not left, right, but you know what I mean. So anyway, let's see. Determining which political party is directly responsible for a government shutdown is complex, as both Democrats and Republicans typically point blame at each other, and responsibility lies with a breakdown of bipartisan negotiation. For the most recent U.S. federal government shutdown that began on October 1st, accusations were traded between both parties. The blame game. So the 2025 shutdown occurred after the Republican-controlled Congress. Here it comes. Because they control Congress, that means no matter what, Republicans, they're at fault. Even though there's no such thing as a 60% majority in the Senate. No, that's never existed before. And the White House, also controlled by Republicans, led by President Donald Evil Orange Man Trump, could not reach a funding agreement with congressional Democrats. Republicans blamed Democrats, particularly Senate Democrats, for refusing to pass a short-term spending bill unless it included certain priority concessions related to healthcare, just certain ones. You mean for illegal immigrants? Oh yeah, actually, here, hold on. All right, hold on. I'm just typing something on the side. I just came up with an 8th question. So anyway, Democrats blamed Republicans for pushing a partisan bill and refusing to negotiate on issues important to Democrats. They also highlighted that Republicans held control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Yeah, and of course, like the billionaire tax breaks, even though that is in no way related to this whole spending bill, healthcare, any of that bullshit. So what is needed to avoid a shutdown? 5 Democrat senators. Do you think it's going to tell us that? Probably not. The federal government requires a budget or a continuing resolution to fund its operations for the fiscal year. Okay, we already know that. The budget or CR must be passed by both the House and the Senate. Already been passed by the House and signed by the president. The Senate's 60-vote threshold for most legislation gives the minority party leverage, allowing them to block bills if a bipartisan consensus isn't reached. Okay, well, that's the core of what I'm looking for. In the case of the 2025 shutdown, a short-term bill that's passed in the House failed to gain. All right, yeah, we already know that. All right, determining blame. Shutdowns are not caused by one party in single action rather than the failure of both parties to find a compromise. Look, dude, it was a clean CR bill. I don't want to get into the weeds with that against Google because it's just going to probably just give me a bunch of blanket bullshit. But anyway, partisan messaging. During a shutdown, both sides engage in intensive public messaging campaigns to cast blame on the opposition. Differing priorities, stalemates often happen because each party prioritizes different policy goals, uses budget process to try and force concessions from the other. Well, that's not going to help in this case, but anyway. So the Senate 60-vote threshold for most legislation gives the minority party leverage, allowing them to block bills. All right, so let me put this in quotes. You think it'll give us the answer? I have a feeling it won't. Well, let's take a look. As you referenced, the 60-vote threshold. All right, let's see. Bipartisan agreement. In the case of the 25 shutdown, Republican-backed spending bill failed because Senate Democrats largely voted against it. Okay, so... All right, so let me grab this. And throw that in quotes, because I want to try to be as specific as possible. Did Democrats shut down the government? That's the simple question that I'm giving it. Oh, that's very convenient. It doesn't want to answer the question. All right, so let's do this. All right, so I'm going to copy that, and let's try this again. All right, please answer the question without dodging the... Okay, see, look at that. See, you know, I have to basically be an asshole to Google for it to actually give me a straight answer, even though it's not going to be a straight answer. I can already tell. Please answer the question without dodging with search results. While Democrats voted against a Republican-backed spending bill, it is not accurate to say they are solely responsible for the 2025 government shutdown, really. Government shutdowns result from a complex legislative process, blah, 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 blah. The causes of failure by both chambers of Congress and the president. Dude, it's not even gotten to the president yet. This has nothing at all to do with President Trump right now because it hadn't gotten to that stage. It's still tied up in the Senate by the Democrats. The necessary appropriations bills to fund federal agencies. Yeah, whatever. All right, here's an overview. Involved in the shutdown, legislative process. Like, yeah, because we're all in, like, second grade. Bipartisan negotiations failed. No, they didn't. It was a clean CR bill. There were no negotiations. All right, so maybe that brings me to my next question. Here, hold on. All right, let's see. Is it true that Democrats voted on the same spending bill in the past multiple times? There have been claims from Republicans and some media outlets that Democrats voted against the same spending bill in 2025 that they had previously supported. However, Democrats and other sources argue... Oh, yeah? So what are the sources? Argue that the bills were not identical and that the Republican-controlled Congress was trying to force a shutdown for political gain. Here's a breakdown of the claims and counterclaims. All right, see, I don't want to get tied up in the weeds with all that. It's on the screen if you want to pause the video, if you want to read, you know, in detail what it's saying. You're welcome to do so. So let's see. Democrats. All right. What was different in the last CR bill? It's a complex answer, which I don't have access to publicly or public congressional records. Democrats argued the Republican-backed resolution was different from previous clean funding extensions of both its specific provisions and its political context. Differences in the bill's provisions: IRS funding cuts. The Republican CR included rescission of $20.2 billion in funding for the IRS that was originally allocated in the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. As Democrats opposed these cuts, arguing they would lead to a decreased tax enforcement and a tax hike on middle-class families. Okay. Defense versus non-defense spending. The bill was not a simple continuation of existing funding. According to reports from March of 25, it included a $6 billion increase in defense spending and a $13 billion cut to non-defense programs. Okay, so let me ask it this. Or hold on, does this current... provisions... over the last, I'll just stick with the then the last. Okay. Does this current CR bill have the fewest number of provisions then, or a fewer number? I meant to say that. The fewest number of provisions is complex, and it depends on how one defines and counts provisions. Okay, so the roadblock I'm getting caught up on right now is Google is saying, well, this current CR bill that Democrats voted against, it's not the exact same CR bill as the last one. For instance, there was funding, I believe that they said was going to cut IRS funding, and then there was something having to do with the military or something like that, or $13 billion for cut to non-defense programs. So it's arguing in March of 2025 when Democrats voted yes for that spending bill, it had these programs in it. And it's saying that this CR bill that they voted no and they shut down the government, it doesn't include this specific thing. And there's a few other things that this CR bill that they voted to shut down doesn't have. So, I mean, I guess in a roundabout way, I kind of got it to admit that Democrats shut down the government. But here, let me ask it again. To shut down the all right, I'm just gonna keep it simple. I was trying to thinking about more specific. The inability of Congress to pass a spending bill and the refusal of both parties to compromise ultimately led to the funding lapse. All right, so you see how much that Google tries to dance around the very obvious. It's quite obvious what I'm looking for. Of course, I do have I guess you could technically maybe call it a bias, even though not. I'm trying to ask it a straight up question: which political party is responsible for the shutdown directly? I don't want to get into well we wanted immigration this and healthcare that. No, I'm talking straight up. When you look at the actual vote that occurred, maybe I should just ask it that. Based on the Senate vote on September 30th, which party voted to shut down the government? Because Google's like, well, that's a loaded question. Not really. It was by that vote they decided it shut down as a result of 5 Democrats voting to not pass the CR bill. Both Senate Democrats and Republicans voted against each other's funding proposals, which, okay, so they're trying to convolute it with Rand Paul because Rand Paul, he jumped over with the Democrats. Neither party voted explicitly to shut down the government. Okay, so you see how they're trying to convolute that even more. But their votes on competing legislation prevented a funding bill from reaching the 60 votes needed. So Republicans introduced the bill. It was voted down primarily by Democrats with a final vote of 55 to 45. All right. Shutdown. Hold on. Caused the current shutdown. All right. This bill was voted down primarily. That one vote does not tell the whole story, so attributing the shutdown to Democrats based on it would be an oversimplification. The shutdown occurred due to a complex partisan disagreement. Not really. I mean, a bill went onto the floor. There were the yays, there were the nays. Democrats, they voted no, and Republicans voted yes, and therefore the government got shut down because there were not enough yeses to allow the government to stay open. They were the Senate was 5 votes short from being able to pass the funding bill, and as a result, the government shut down because they needed 5 votes from the Democrats in order to pass the bill. 5 Democrats said, I mean, like all of them except for what, 2 or no 1. John Fetterman voted yes to keep the government open, and then I believe there was an independent or maybe 2 independents. Actually, no, I think there were 2 Democrats and 1 independent who voted with Republicans. So, or no, maybe it was 2. Fuck, I don't even know, man. It was 25 days ago. This is how long the shutdown's been going on. It's been 25 days, 20 hours, 21 minutes, and 37 seconds and counting. But no, I believe that they needed 7 in total from Democrats or independents in order to keep the government open. But 2 joined the Republicans out of those 7. The other 5 wouldn't vote to keep it open, so therefore it shut down. So the vote was against a partisan bill. Uh-oh, really? Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. Let me think. The vote was a partisan bill. Dude, I bet I could go back and forth with Google for hours on this. That voted against on September 30th was not identical. See, like, I said generally. That's why I threw in the word generally. Because I know it's not the exact same. I didn't say exact same bill. I said in general. Maybe I'm not the best person to battle Google AI with. Because, yeah, on the fly, maybe... Yeah, I'm sure I could probably word that much better than that. So, all right. So let me see what else I have, because I think I'm eventually going to start going in circles with regard to this. Let's see. All right. All right. Hold on. I think I basically already asked that question, so I might actually skip over that because I already know what it's going to generally tell me. So, is it true that the government shut down because 5 Democrat senators refused to vote? Okay, let me ask it that. Let's see. Let me ask it this. Is it true the government shut down because 5 Democrat senators refused to vote for a budget bill? No, it's not true that 5 Democratic senators were the sole cause of the 2025 government shutdown. Let's see. While some Democrats did vote against a Republican funding bill, the shutdown was the result of a partisan stalemate where neither party could pass its preferred legislation due to the Senate's 60-vote requirement. Voted. Let's see if it'll even tell me that. Will you even say, just give me 1 for Democrats? Nope. Here we go. Regarding the continuing resolution bill on September 30th, 2025, Democrats voted overwhelmingly against the version proposed by Republicans. The vote in the Senate was 55 to 45, which with most Democrats opposing the bill, which failed to get the 60 votes needed to pass. A small number of Democrats voted with Republicans, but the majority of the party was in opposition. I think that's probably about as close to a win as I'm going to get with Google. So I think I might just have to take that for what it is. So let me ask this one. The extension, oops, spelled it wrong, of the I don't want to offend Google. I'm not going to say illegal immigrants because it might get offended. So let's see what it says. Extension of ACA tax credits Democrats want passed. No, the extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits that Democrats supported would not apply to undocumented immigrants. All right. Hold on. So eligibility for these federal subsidies is explicitly limited to U.S. citizens and lawfully present immigrants. All right. So, all right. Now let me think how I can word this. Because it's not directly the federal government that's giving the healthcare funding to illegal immigrants. It's on the state level. The state level provides the healthcare to the illegal immigrants, and the federal government reimburses them. That's my understanding of what actually happens. And that's that's primarily how Democrats are able to say, well, no, the federal government doesn't pay for illegal immigrants to get healthcare, but they is subsidized the right word? I don't know. They basically pay for it by proxy. So let me think how I can formulate this one. You know what? Actually, here, I'll just ask it straight up. How do they say it? Let's see what Google says about that. Have they ever received? Oh, they generally do not receive taxpayer-funded healthcare. Well, yeah. So basically, just because 51% of illegal immigrants are not receiving healthcare services currently, then Google most likely is saying, well, they generally don't receive them at all. No, they never do generally. Probably because 51% of illegal immigrants have not needed to go to the hospital. They haven't been injured. They haven't had a life-threatening illness or anything like that. So I don't know. That's just my just random thought as far as that. But they generally do not receive taxpayer-funded healthcare. But there are important exceptions at both the federal and state levels. Federal exceptions: all immigrants, emergency care. Yes, I already know that applies to Americans too. That by law, the emergency room has to treat you, even though that they can bill you and come after you later. Requires hospitals that accept Medicare funds to provide emergency medical treatment regardless of a patient's immigration status, insurance, or ability to pay. So does that mean, oh man, I would love to ask this question to Google, but it's not relevant. I would love to know, does that mean that the hospital is going to come after those illegal immigrants for money? Because we all know they're not. Of course they're not going to. The federal emergency Medicaid program reimburses hospitals for these emergency services. Oh, okay, so if I go into the hospital, because technically I don't have the money to pay for an emergency room visit, I really don't. I work full time, but I'm just like most other people. I live paycheck to paycheck. It's slim pickings. I try to save what I can, but it's never enough. So if I went into the emergency room and I said, look, I don't have an ability to pay. I know you want to charge me like $17,000 just for kidney stone or something. And yeah, I can't afford this, can't afford that. I do have insurance, but they're requiring me to, well, that would probably fuck it up by itself. So they'd probably say, well, that's between you and your insurance company. But the whole deductible thing, it's like 45% of the bill, I have to pay out of pocket up until like $8,000 or something like that. So if I have an inability to pay, will this whole federal emergency Medicaid program, will it just, cover it for me? I highly doubt it. Anyway, whatever, that's getting way off subject. So state options for federal funding. Some states can use federal funding for children or unborn children, regardless of immigration status. For instance, blah, 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 state-specific coverage. A number of states provide their own funding for healthcare programs that do include undocumented immigrants, particularly for children and pregnant people. Yeah, because men can get pregnant too, according to Google. So This is pretty much in the realm of what I was looking for, because the states will provide their own health coverage for illegals, such as California and Medi-Cal, and the federal government reimburses them. I don't know if they reimburse them 100%, but they reimburse a substantial amount of money. So I've read. Is it true that the federal... Oh, let's see. I'm getting off the subject, but let's see. It is true that the federal government, through the Medicaid program, reimburses providers for some emergency services for undocumented immigrants. However, this is a very limited exception. It does not provide comprehensive ongoing healthcare coverage. Yeah, meaning that they're required by law to stabilize the illegal immigrant, and off they go. But that applies to anybody. Whether if you're illegal or not. If you stumble into an emergency room and they say, "Oh, you don't have insurance? Ha, sucks to be you," and you die on the freaking in the waiting room, yeah, they're gonna get the shit suit out of them, because they should. Even if it's an illegal immigrant and they're literally dying, you gotta stabilize them, and then we'll figure out how to squeeze money out of them later on. So, I don't think that would surprise anybody. I think that your average American, even conservative or even a Republican, would probably agree with me that even if they're here illegally and they're on the verge of death, at least stabilize them, and then you can tell them to F off. So that's of no surprise. However, how much of it is being reimbursed? See, there's another problem with the illegal immigrants too. They're using the emergency room as just a basic doctor's office. If they get a cat scratch, if they trip and fall and skin their knee, if they wake up with a headache, there's a lot of people that are on welfare benefits, they're on Medicaid, and they pull that same shit too. They pull that all the time. They freaking slight headaches. Like I said, I got my arm got scratched by my dog, so I'm gonna go in because I might have rabies or whatever. They go there every other day. They're there. Seeking emergency services, because by law, the emergency room has to treat them and stabilize them. Then convoluted. And guess what? The American taxpayer has to pay for it. That's also why our health insurance is so sky high expensive, because too many people take advantage of it. A lot of people also probably got Munchausens who are sitting on freaking government welfare benefits, and probably including illegals too. So anyway, breakdown of the reimbursement. All right, so anyway, I don't want to get caught up too much into it. It did give me a somewhat satisfactory answer, the one before I started getting lost into the whole insurance aspect of it. I didn't really want to get that far into it, but that was basically what I was looking for. I did get Google to admit that Democrats voted overwhelmingly against the version proposed by Republicans. That's probably as close to a win as I can get Google to say. I just wanted them to be honest. There were 5 Democrat senators, not 5 specifically. We're just talking just the Democrat senators in general. However many there are. How many are there? 43 or 40, 45, something. I don't, whatever. There's 45 or something like that, Democrat senators in the Senate. Well, we only needed 5 of them. Well, technically 7, if you include the independents, because I believe there's 2 independent senators, something like that, give or take. But yeah, anyway. So 7 votes beyond Republicans were needed in order to pass the CR bill. That's probably the simplest way to put it. And they were still 5 votes short, and they needed those 5 votes from Democrats or Rand Paul. Google, they obviously it didn't shy away from throwing out the fact that, well, without naming them directly, that Rand Paul sided with the Democrats on that. So they actually needed yet another vote. And see, just because Rand Paul, the only Republican to vote against the CR bill, that opens up the door for websites like Google or even political pundits on the left for them to say that this was a bipartisan effort to block this bill because XYZ, because they refused to add healthcare to it. They refused to extend the tax credits. It's so annoying. If you get one single politician, even in the House, if you get one single politician who's on the other party who joins the party who's proposing the bill, even if it's dead split along party lines, it is as 50-50 as they could get. But they get one single politician to vote on the other side, now all of a sudden it's bipartisan. Oh my God, it's in the middle of the road bipartisan bill. It's as bipartisan as it can get. But when you actually, I'm not even suggesting you read between the lines. If you actually just read it for what it is. Oh yeah, it was only Senator Rand Paul. He was literally the only senator who voted with Democrats. And his reason for voting with them had nothing to do with the healthcare. It had everything to do with the national deficit. Because he's pissed off that this CR bill and every other CR bill that they pass, it adds debt to our national deficit. And he's sick of it. So I can't say exactly blame him for that. So anyway, I figured I would ask Grok. I'm not going to ask it if Google AI is politically biased. I mean, I think that's kind of ridiculous because, it's Grok. But anyway, which political party directly shut down the government in this most recent shutdown? I have a feeling it's going to give me a similar answer. Like, it's a very complicated process. But I expected Google to give me everything that it gave me. A lot of pushback, a lot of stonewalling, a lot of convoluted directions, not answering the question at all, instead just throwing search results until I had to press it extra hard. Like, no, don't give me the search result bullshit. Tell me straight up. Don't be a wuss. Answer me like a man. Fucking Google AI. Beta male. Oh my God, dude. Grok takes so long sometimes. This is supposed to be Grok 4. Fast. Beta. All right, here we go. Democratic Party. Oh, it told me straight up. Look at this, man. Grok is based. So it said, it actually took 38 seconds. That's actually a long time. So it really dug through the weeds to give me this answer. So according to Grok, it says Democratic Party, the most recent U.S. federal government shutdown began on October 1st, 2025, and was still ongoing as of October 26, 2025. Today is the is it the 28th? Oh no, it's the 26th. Oh my God, dude, I'm so off. All right, anyway, it resulted from Congress failing to pass a continuing resolution to fund the government, or to fund government operations beyond the fiscal year deadline. Republicans who control both the House and the Senate passed a clean, quote-unquote clean, short-term CR in the House on September 19th, 2025, extending funding through November 21st without additional policy changes. See, without additional policy changes. Google was really, God, dude, talk about pulling teeth. However, this bill failed multiple times in the Senate, e.g. 51-47 on September 30th, as it couldn't secure the 60 votes needed to overcome a Democratic filibuster. Oh, yeah, I could have used the word filibuster and asked Google, I could have plugged that in and see if that may have changed its thinking anymore. I highly doubt it. Democrats, led by figures like Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, refused to support it unless it included extensions for Affordable Care Act, health insurance subsidies set to expire, potentially raising premiums for 24 million enrollees, and reversals of recent Republican cuts to Medicaid and other health programs. Democratic counter-proposals, which added about $1 trillion in health spending, failed along party lines. Yes, it did fail along party lines, and I actually appreciate that Grok actually worded it that way, because many others would have probably said failed along bipartisan lines or something along those lines, because they had Senator Rand Paul join the Democrats, even though Senator Rand Paul did not join the Democrats because he wanted $1 trillion in health spending. He doesn't want that at all. In fact, he wants about as far from that as humanly possible. He doesn't want anything to be added to our national deficit. And you think this $1 trillion in health spending, if it were to get passed by the Democrats, do you think it'd be added to the national debt? Oh, you bet your ass it will. President Trump and Republicans rejected these demands, viewing the shutdown as leverage. Okay, so we already know that. Democrats countered that Republicans were weaponizing hunger by not compromising on popular health measures, according to CNN. While both parties share blame in this partisan standoff, and polls show slightly more public fault on Republicans, which I don't think asking that. I did ask Google a couple of questions before I started this video. That's what inspired me to even start the video. It did tell me that the public sentiment with regard to the shutdown, it said the same thing as Grok. It said that the public views Republicans more at fault because the Democrats just keep saying over and over again, well, Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, they control the presidency, they even had a cherry on top, they even control the Supreme Court. So it's not our fault, we don't control anything. because they just count on everybody being low IQ. They probably don't even teach government in school anymore, do they? Well, actually, yeah, they do, because my daughter took it, I think, in 11th grade. At least the class was called government, which they probably cram in so much stuff. But even despite all the stuff that they cram into a semester for one class about government, I still remembered that you need 60 votes in the Senate to pass something. In most cases, I don't believe that applies to literally every single thing, but I think it applies to most, if not almost everything. So yeah, I mean, if people just would understand that. But at the end of the day, most people, they don't pay attention to politics. They don't give a shit. They work all day. They're trying to raise their kids, at least the few Americans who still have kids. So anyway, so the Democrats directly triggered the shutdown by blocking the Republican-led funding bill in the Senate, preventing its passage despite GOP control of Congress. I would almost be, I would almost like be tempted. I might actually do that real quick, to just copy this section and paste it into Google and say, what the hell do you think about this? This mirrors past shutdowns like in 2013 when the minority party, then Republicans, held out for policy writers, but roles are reversed here. Interesting that it went with 2013 and not 2018, because 2018 was during the longest government shutdown, which didn't start, I think it was like in December 2017, and it rolled over into January of 2018. All right, so that was on BBC. Let me just ask it one more thing. Is this true? Just out of curiosity. Directly triggered the 2025 shutdown as a matter of partisan framing and interpretation of events and not an objective fact. So Grok is completely wrong. Obviously, according to Google. But see, Google, I think everybody's pretty clear on the fact that Google does lean left. Google was created in Silicon Valley. It's been controlled by Silicon Valley since the 1990s. Didn't they change their motto? It was like, do no evil or something. Like, what? Didn't they change it to something that was like kind of nefarious? Let me see what that was. What is... Don't be evil. Yeah, that was it. Original motto, which was replaced in 2015 by its parent company, Alphabet, with the motto, do the right thing. Oh, as if, doing the right thing may sometimes involve doing evil shit. Because I'm sure, according to those who created or changed that motto, I'm sure that was their way of thinking. I mean, that sounds very left-wing to me. Where it's like, well, we have to do the right thing. Well, whatever. I'm not going to get philosophical about that. I was about to be like, well, what is the right thing? How does one come to find the right thing? Who determines what the right thing might be? Whatever. I don't want to get all philosophical or whatever. So anyway, I don't know. Should I cut it here? Maybe I'll just cut it here. How long has this been going on for? Like probably freaking half an hour. Yeah, over a half an hour. Yeah, so there you have it. I guess if you want, you leave a comment. I don't know if I'll do this again. Like, if this video gets any views, and if I get like 5 or 6 comments that are questions to ask, then maybe I'll do another video on this. But I mean, I kind of had fun with it. I fully expected Google to take it in this direction. Maybe because, look, that question that I asked Grok, that straight up simple one, which political party directly shut down the government in this most recent shutdown? Grok told me straight up, the first 2 words, Democratic Party. I mean, look, thank you, Grok. That was exactly the answer I was looking for. Because if you want to give out a simple, straight answer, even if you want to give, like, even giving Google some credit with it saying, well, both sides are at fault in some way, shape, or form, so I can't exactly tell you which one. I'm like, okay, fine. If one party or the other was at least 51% responsible of the consequences that caused the government to be shut down currently, which political party would it be? Of course, Google wouldn't answer that. It would say, well, that's a very difficult... No, dude, obviously it's the Democrats. Because we need Democrats to get the government open. Let me just finish off on this. Democrat, let me do Democrat senators. All right, and then here we go. Do we need Democrat senators to get... Oh, see, I didn't want to answer that. Without hiding behind... All right, search results. I'm going to be a dick, because it's kind of been a dick to me all night. Nope, still doesn't want to do it. Of course not. All right. Why can't you just, like, look, I mean, all right, hold on. Let me just ask it straight up. Like, what? That very simple question. Oh, Google's such an asshole. Fuck Google, man. Fuck Google. Fucking asshole. Look, YouTube, you're cool. Google search, Google AI, fucking asshole. And that's why I don't like using Google AI very often. If I'm trying to look for something that's like basic, like how do I get to here, or what was the name of that person in that one movie? Yeah, fine, I'll use Google for all that shit. But when it comes to like trying to get a simple, straight answer like that, no, it's not. It's absolutely not going to. Do we need Democrat senators to get the government reopened? Why is that such a hard question to answer? You know what? Fine. I'll just ask Grok and let's see. So in case you were wondering, if you just happen to watch this video, and if you've seen me use Grok repeatedly on my channel, this is a good example as to why. Because it tends to give me a straight up answer. So let's see what Grok ends up saying. Oh, do I have my oh yeah, I got my background music on. I might have to turn it up a little bit. I know sometimes it's hard to hear. Yes, Democratic senators' votes are essential to reopen the government in the current shutdown, which remains ongoing as of October 26, now the second longest in U.S. history at 26 days. Which, let's put a cherry on top of this one. All right, let's see. Democrats. It is, of course, we already know this. In the year of our Lord, 2018, they finally reopened it after 35 days. Which, I remember that. But it didn't seem to be as chaotic as this shutdown. Like, they're making it sound way worse this time around, which, I mean, it does suck. I mean, they've got people in the military that are lining up at food banks just outside of the military bases where there's local food banks. And according to at least one food bank that I heard from, that I actually played the video on my show last week, they said it was the longest party that they, or the longest line that they've seen. Okay, so it says Republican Party, the longest U.S. federal government shutdown in history lasted 35 days from December 22nd, 2018 to January 2019. It was triggered by President Donald Trump's insistence on $5.7 billion in funding for a U.S.-Mexico border wall as a condition for signing a bipartisan spending bill. Oh. Well, then why was... I don't know who it was. Maybe it was on Fox News. I don't know. But somewhere on my show last week, actually quite a few times I've mentioned that the longest shutdown was a result, or that it was essentially the Democrats' fault. But according to Grok, it's not. So I may have to stand corrected on that. So I do remember that, building the wall. He wanted extra funding for it. I definitely remember that. There was something like 600-700 miles that were left to build. And of course, the Democrats were stonewalling that entire time. I mean, to the point where as soon as Biden got in, they started like ripping up sections of the border wall, at least the temporary sections they were. They even had court orders to back them up. Let's see. A condition for signing a bipartisan spending bill to fund government operations. It derailed a previously agreed upon clean continuing resolution. Okay, so the same thing, a clean CR bill that had passed the Senate unanimously without wall funding, leading Trump to reverse course under pressure from his conservative base and right-wing media. Republicans control the White House, the Senate, of course. I do remember that. While Democrats held a slim House majority after the 2018 midterms. So Mitch McConnell refused to bring Democratic House-passed clean funding bills to a vote unless Trump approved them, prolonging the impasse. While Democrats opposed wall funding, viewing it as ineffective and a waste of money, and filibustering Republican bills that included it, Trump explicitly took ownership, stating he was proud to shut down the government for border security and owned the shutdown. Republicans blamed Democrats for obstructionism and refusing to negotiate on border security. But Democrats countered that Republicans were holding federal workers and services hostage, which is what Democrats are doing right now, to fulfill Trump's campaign promise. Public polls overwhelmingly attributed responsibility to Trump. Well, I mean, if Trump literally said, quote unquote, I'm proud to shut down the government for border security, then yeah, duh. Of course the public's going to blame Trump for it. I mean, I think even Trump would fully expect that. Washington Post news poll, 53% blame Trump Republicans, 34% Democrats, yada, yada. Okay, all right, well, then I'm going to own that. Then I completely stand corrected, assuming what Grok is saying is true, and I am assuming that it's true. It's detailed enough. I definitely remember some aspects of this, even though it was several years ago. Dude, politics moves a million miles an hour these days. And like so much shit happens on a daily basis. It's almost impossible to keep up, which is kind of the point. I mean, that's what both Republicans and Democrats really count the everyday American people to grapple with, is trying to remember all the shit that keeps happening, all these scandals, dude. Like there was Watergate, and then like there was no other scandal bigger than Watergate for like what 50 years, and then all of a sudden like we just get this week another scandal, this week another scandal, tomorrow another scandal, and then another and another, and it just keeps like compounding. It's like a snowball effect. It just gets worse and worse. All right, so yeah, Republicans currently they're responsible for the longest shutdown in history because Trump wanted funding for the border wall. Democrats said no, and then Trump said, okay, well, I'm shutting this shit down then, because I'm not going to sign it then. Then government's not going to, is not going to stay open. I'm shutting it down. But I mean, obviously, eventually they came to some agreement. Okay, here it is. All right. Let's see. Ending only when Trump agreed to a temporary bill without wall funding amid mounting pressures like air traffic controller sick outs for comparison. All right, so 35 days. Oh shit, what happened? Let me scooch that back over. Okay, never mind. There we go. 2025 ongoing. 21 days. Republicans. Is that the part? The primary primary blame per polls. Yeah, man, it looks like Republicans historically are the ones that have to own these government shutdowns that occurred in history. So the very first government shutdown we've ever had in American history was in 1995. Unbelievable, dude. I think it's probably because we have a spending problem. Probably because there was never an option to shut down the government before, because, you know, we weren't digging ourselves into infinite debt back then up until now. But all right, anyway, I'll just leave it there. I just figured I'd do a video on that because I asked Google a couple of questions just in passing, and it was giving me like these ridiculous answers. So I was like, you know what? I think I could come up with enough questions, at least a few questions, to make a quick video about it. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. See you later.